China, a country which has underwent thorough political, social, and economic reforms. After Deng Xiaoping took power in 1978, China as a whole began down the path which would lead them to become an economic superpower. 30 years of change and reform have led to a modern China with its own gamut of political, social, and environmental issues. The 1980s. A year after the death of Mao Zedong in 1976, Deng Xiaoping took control. Recognizing the need to modernize and develop, he introduced 4 cardinal principles in 1979 which would shape Chinese society. He advocated for advances in agriculture, industry, defense, and science. Economic zones were created in 1980 as an economic experiment. These changes dramatically boosted the economy. China began experiencing growth rates of over 10% a year. In 1984, 14 coastal cities were opened to foreign investment. In 1989, stock markets opened in Shanghai and Shenzhen. The various actions taken to accelerate industrialization resulted in too much growth. In 1988, economic growth brought an 18.5% inflation rate and corruption within the government. Many officials repeatedly stole money from government funds, then fled to foreign countries. In 1980, Deng Xiaoping introduced the one-child policy on a national level in order to combat the rapidly growing population, which reached 1 billion in 1982. The one-child policy essentially placed a one-child limit per family. Praised by foreign officials for its simplicity, in reality it was devastating for many rural families who depended on a large workforce and male heirs. Officials often used forced abortions, sterilizations, and even infanticide to enforce this law. Although these methods were brutal and in some eyes unjustified, they were successful in slowing population growth from 1.07 to 0.57%. Chinese education underwent changes as well during the 1980s. In 1985, the system of free higher education was replaced by scholarships based on ability. Coupled with the hukou system introduced in 1958, students were limited not only to the colleges in their region of birth, but also by their academic ability. However, the increasing amount of education within and outside of China created friction between the students and the government. In 1986, students who had studied abroad and wished for more freedom and contribution to the government gathered at Tiananmen Square to protest and request change. They advocated for a more open government, as well as intellectual freedom. In response, the military was sent in, and in 1989, the Tiananmen Massacre took place. Within a few days, the People's Liberation Army had cleared the square of civilians, and the Chinese government stated that the event resulted in a total of 241 dead, 7,000 wounded. However, other estimates are much higher. In the following 16 years, there would be a variety of public protests against the government throughout China. The 1990s. While various issues were occurring politically, China's economy continued to grow at full tilt. Deng Xiaoping accelerated market reforms to achieve this goal of socialist economy. These reforms occurred in response to 17% inflation. Over the next 12 years, government businesses rapidly closed and were replaced by private businesses. In 1996, the Chinese government received missile technology from various U.S. businesses. These led to the development of communication satellites, and the internet was introduced to China. Computers and software began growing as an industry during this time period. Companies such as Intel and Microsoft established themselves in China. Internet censorship was introduced to prevent citizens from accessing sites and information which would lead to questioning the communist government. However, between 1998 and 1999, many Asian countries suffered from the Asian financial crisis. The event began during the collapse of the Thailand economy. The debt spread to other Asian countries such as Japan, India, and China. In 1997, Deng Xiaoping died and was replaced by Jiang Zemin. During the same year, China gained control of Hong Kong. The turn of the century. China's economy was still growing following the turn of the century. A year later, the People's Republic of China joined the World Trade Organization. In 2008, the government introduced a $586 billion stimulus package, and China became the 4th largest economy in the world and would eventually surpass Japan's. China experienced an average of 10% growth a year over the past 30 years. China also began to develop modern technology which enabled them to send humans into orbit around Earth. The first manned spacecraft was sent into orbit in 2003. 2 astronauts orbited Earth in the Shenzhou 6 only 2 years later. In 2007, the Chang'e 1 was launched to explore the moon. Also over the past decade was a dramatic increase in internet users, from 94 million in 2004 to 103 million in 2005. Along with the increase in internet users came an increase in censorship. Politically, the PRC is undergoing a change in leaders. In 2011, a year after a director was executed for corruption, provincial committees in 14 provinces began reorganization of their government. Reiterating the necessity of reformation, new leaders are going to be inaugurated into the PRC in the fall of 2012. China's population has been drifting towards a very urbanized setting. Children born in cities, like Hong Kong, receive many more opportunities than those in the mainland. Because of the hukou system, a student can only apply to colleges in the area where he or she is born. However, colleges accept more students from the cities than the rest of the country, despite the difference in number of applicants. The modern economy and technology brought along a host of environmental issues which came to light in the past century. In 2002, the first case of SARS was discovered in the Guangdong province of China. SARS is a lung disease standing for Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome. The disease would later become a pandemic in China. In 2005, the World Health Organization estimated that 50 million Chinese would die prematurely from poor air and water quality. Major pollution was also seen in rivers, such as the Xianghua River and the Haibi River. However, Chinese technology still progressed. In 2006, China surpassed the US in CO2 use, mainly as a result of fossil fuels and cement production. However, because of the Beijing Olympic Games in 2008, the Chinese government was hurrying to clean the air within Beijing. In 2009, Chinese families were producing more garbage than the US. Over the past 30 years, the Communist Party has opened up China's borders and sparked a dramatic change in the economy. Along with the increased focus on development and education, the government also began to change. The economic reformation has created a host of environmental issues for Chinese citizens. What began as the modernization of an economy has transformed all aspects of China after Mao Zedong's death.